Okay, welcome to the Audit Committee, Audit and Assurance Committee on the 17th of October. The meeting is a hybrid meeting, so we have a significant number of people in the room, which is lovely to see. Some that we haven't touched base with for, I think Paul reminded me, about 3 years. So lovely to see internal audit here in person, and obviously we've got colleagues coming in on the screen. You aren't particularly large on the screen, so, and I will try and keep my eye on hands going up, but if I do miss anything, then please just shout if all else fails, or wave arms around. Okay, I don't think we've got any visitors this morning, any guests. We do have one guest who's attending, who isn't here at the moment, I don't believe, Martin Lewis from, oh, he is he?
Yeah, on the top left.
Top left. Hello, Martin. Welcome to the Audit Committee. I'm so sorry. Without or with glasses, I can't actually quite see your your name. So welcome to the Audit Committee, and I understand you're here to present the IT migration report. So, very warm welcome to you. If we move on then to apologies for absence.
Apologies received from Tina Donnelly.
Okay, thank you, David. And then moving on to the unconfirmed minutes of the previous audit committee on the 12th of July. And if I take those first of all for accuracy, so page 1.
Yeah, I think that Janine's name isn't spelled correctly at the front. She hasn't got any.
Great, thank you. Page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Okay, can I take those as a true record?
Yes.
Thank you, Jonathan. And the action log from the committee of the 12th of July. This will be a short item, I think, David.
Yeah, just to confirm the action has been completed, Joe.
Thank you, and thank you, Gareth, for giving us an answer on that. Are there any matters arising from the minutes that haven't been either agenda today or discussed? Has anybody got any matters to raise? No. Okay, lovely. Okay, so if we move on to the matters for consideration, we'll start with the Freedom of Information and Data Subject Access Report. David, I believe you're going to take this one.
I am, diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly, adroddiad i'w nodi gwybodaeth ydy hon. Mae o'n ystyried ceisiadau prynu gwybodaeth neu FOIs.
If anything, if anybody else is working. No.
System closed me out, so I can do it in the room, but I can't do it online.
Okay. Anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So shall I? Obviously. So, felly, adroddiad i'w nodi gwybodaeth i'w hon, but no, sorry, does that mean that the guys externally can't?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, we'll have to switch to English now. So my notes are in Welsh because it's slightly less to translate.
Well, everybody's read the paper, so don't worry.
Okay, fine. No, that's good. So this is a report for noticing, for information. There's two elements really. First of all, the summarise the Freedom of Information request that we received, and also secondly the data subject access request that we've received. It would be usually the case that this report would be considered by the Information Governance and Management Committee, the IGIM. That group has not met during this cycle, the reason being that we've had a change in the key members of staff. Actually, we'll meet in the next 6 weeks. So we are therefore just taking this report directly, and just to confirm that during the reporting period we've had 4 FOIs, all of which responded within time, and we've had 1 data subject access request, Ken responded to within time. Therefore, just to confirm this is a paper for noticing for deletion.
Thank you, David. Any questions?
No question, Chair, specifically in relation to this report, but just wanted in terms of the whole year, how many data subject action requests and how many FOIs we generally get? Is it
Compared to a health board of trust.
exactly in respect to health board
It's quite
trust?
a-
Very different.
Of the, I think that we received between 20 and 30 FOIs a year in the last 3 years, and the data subject access requests are quite low. It seems the case that it would be a handful a year, so it's very low. We're not publicly facing, which I think is a low profile compared to health board of trust.
Okay, thanks very much. Thank you for producing the report, because I know there's some staff vacancies in the IG and IM areas, so I think it's important the audit committee does receive this, so thank you. So happy to note the report.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, internal audit, I'll hand over to Paul.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of our progress, I'll talk briefly about overall good progress on the plan. There are 5 reports which are now either out in draft or have been completed. I can see on the progress report there that there's a little bit of a timing one, that the partnership one is on the agenda today, but it shows draft in the progress report. 1 or 2 small points to note. I guess in terms of the workforce review, that probably took a little bit longer than expected to get the responses back through, but in terms of the overall timing for the committee, that was fine, and it worked in our sequencing in that respect. For the outstanding reviews on the plan for this year, we had a good portion. We had the scoping discussions briefs already agreed, so it feels like we're in quite a good position. Wasn't prepared to say present sustainable.
Yeah, just really quickly, Chair, if I can. Firstly, can I thank Paul and the team, because this is huge piece of work to pull this plan together, and despite every effort that is made to make sure the plan is robust and deliverable, and as you said, you get the objectives and scoping done early is absolutely critical. I'm just wondering, are there any reflections or particular risks that we should be aware of in terms of delivering the plan going forward from here, based on the experiences of delivering the plan thus far? You mentioned in respect of one particular piece of work, the speed of responses in the organisation. Clearly that's critical, because you can do all the work that you can do, but clearly we've got to make sure that we're responding quickly here as well.
Yeah, but I think what for me it's good that we have dialogue with David on a regular basis. We meet with him just to flag up any issues and try and nip them in the bud as they're coming along. That's a really helpful dynamic to have. With the winter coming, I guess it's always a difficult one, but I think my personal view is that we've set ourselves up in a good position, having agreed the scope of a lot of the reviews that we have in the pipeline. So, we can control what we can control, and we'll work to do that. I think, as I said, that sort of early dialogue is a really helpful one to have if there are any problems down the line.
To add to that, really, I'm really pleased that we're making good progress. As an audit committee, we've been keen to sort of get on the front foot, I think, on the plan, and really pleased. So thanks should go to all the team. Paul, thank you for sticking to your part of the bargain and pressing on with the programme. So great, thank you. Okay, we're going to take, which order do you want to take these in?
So we take them in the order they are.
Yeah.
Emma will talk around the
So yeah, the next one on the agenda is the workforce and training development one. Piece of work we did over the summer, with the focus being around the training of workforce arrangements. So the training and development arrangements for HOW's own staff. Exec summary on what's page 3 of our report, page 27 of the pack. I think summarise everything. So I wasn't going to say too much really. Overall, we've got substantial assurance. There's one key matter arising that came out of the report, and that was just in relation to reporting back on progress against the learning development plan that's been in place for a few years now, just making sure they're closing the loop and reporting back against progress against that. There were 2 other low priority findings, but all have been accepted by management, so I didn't intend to say much more than that. Really.
Just if I can, Chair, just to say thank you for the report, and certainly to welcome the substantial assurance that you've provided. Obviously, there's that one area of reasonable assurance around the monitoring, reporting at appropriate levels, and obviously welcome the steer to strengthen that element. So it's good to see that in there. And I think we have to be confident as an organisation that whilst we're used to getting reports of substantial assurance, that identifying areas of improvement and good practice is not disastrous, it's healthy. So I'm welcome to steer on that.
Yeah, agreed. We can't expect substantial assurance for every single report. This one doesn't surprise me really, because if you'd asked me, one of the things that I think HEOW did well from setup was think about staff culture, behaviours, making sure people are trained. So this doesn't surprise me, but it's still a nice, a welcome surprise nonetheless. So I'm sure they will take that recommendation on board.
And then just to put it, what do I say? An audit dampener on things.
Expanding works.
I think we absolutely want organisations to move in that right direction, getting the substantial assurances and helping progress and develop. But the caveat to that would be that I think if we were getting only substantials all the time, then perhaps that would send a few alarm bells in my head about, are we looking in the right direction? Are we exploring things? So I think it's healthy to have. It's great that we're bringing substantials, but I think it's healthy to be prepared to accept reasonables or limiters if and when they do appear. It's the right thing.
Absolutely. True auditor.
So I think
we had that conversation.
we have. So we've got the depending on measure of the high set of results, but we do have a conversation with exec each year. We are trying to point at areas where we're going to learn. We don't want to look at the areas where we're not going to learn. So we are deliberately trying to point the auditors at areas where we're going to learn the problem areas. So I take up what you're saying, but we are generally trying to kind of point you in that direction.
Okay, thank you. We'll do all the noting at the end. I think that's probably easier. So if we move on to the migration of IT systems, Martin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so this is an audit looking at the migration of the IT systems from your previous suppliers, third-party suppliers, into the new Azure cloud environment. Overall, the outcome review was substantial assurance. The move, it was a well-controlled project. It has been successful and has now resulted in a strong, resilient position with an improved security posture for the organisation. There's plenty of good practice points within kind of the work. The Azure environment configuration and setup complies with best practices. There's backup process in place and sufficient protections there. Security was involved in the project quite heavily. There's good, I said, program and project management, and quite pragmatic given the nature of the project. There was testing undertaken on each of the systems as it moved across. I don't say too much because it was substantial assurance. There's only 3 key issues within the report with recommendations. The first one is that the access privileges within the environment still reflect the project status and need. So they need to be reviewed to minimise the access into the environment and enable accountability for each individual accessing it. And then there was next one is to ensure that the recommended training within the business case for the Azure migration is provided as intended and tracked to make sure people keep up to date with their skills in relation to managing the environment. And then the last point is ensuring that UAT user testing is formally documented and signed off. This was a note that's been picked up by the digital director themselves as a learning point from the project. But overall, it's substantial assurance and it's a well-controlled project. And you've got a nice new shiny environment. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, can I, in welcoming the report, say how pleased I am to see the progress that has been made. If I could just focus on the skills issue, Martin, if that's okay. I'm thinking of paragraph 2.16. So there's reference there to some key staff have left, so the organisation is trying to recruit. What I'm curious to know is over what period of time are we talking? Have staff left very, very recently so that we are now in an active recruitment process? Or are we talking about something that is taking a lot longer than just recently? So are we suggesting that some staff left a while ago and we're now struggling to recruit and we're now continuing to struggle to recruit? Or is this something that's only just recently happened? I'm trying to understand where we're at as an organisation, because I'm just curious as to also know, are we talking about a set of circumstances that are not just unique to us, but are also encountered by other organisations which have struggled to recruit what are probably quite specialist skills? I'm guessing maybe it's a market issue.
Yeah, I mean, and a caveat. So the staff leaving isn't very recent, but conversely, it wasn't a long time ago. I think it was kind of towards the middle and the end of the project that people left. It is difficult to recruit to this. The skills needed for managing kind of the cloud environments they are quite specialist, and they're also heavily in demand. And it's one of those posts within NHS Wales where we can't necessarily pay a market rate. So we've got to kind of look at alternative ways to encourage staff to either come and join us or develop our own staff and kind of keep them. So the skills are being covered at the moment by staff already in place. But going forward, I think we do need to try and keep on the recruitment. It is an active recruitment, I believe, but they do need to try and get someone in to cover this off. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. I suppose, Chair, the additional point is the fact that it's being managed by existing staff and through external consultancy support. Well, that itself is the long-term solution now. It's a solution for now, but I suppose at some point it does need to be addressed.
Good point, Jonathan, and I mean it is a market issue, isn't it? But I think we should flag it up that we'd like perhaps some plan about what's going to be done to address the situation. That's like almost asking for the impossible, I know, but nevertheless, some assurance that that there's a rigorous recruitment. Okay. All right. Thank you, Martin. Is there anything else you want to say on it?
No, I think to say it is a well-controlled project, and you've got a nice environment to work with now. So,
yeah, I think we should say thank you to the team for handling the migration.
Absolutely.
I think it's been handled in a, and I know there was some nervousness and some wobbles along the way. So, so I think our thanks should go to the team for handling it in a very professional way.
Sure. I'm just thinking we've got one other IT focused review to do this year, and to be honest, I can't remember off the top of my head what the scope is specifically and whether we're looking, there's a workforce element to that piece as well. I don't know whether you can remember. I don't know, you have lots of different things, but just trying to triangulate John's question just to make sure that outside of this project there is that thinking around workforce. Yeah,
Everywhere, particularly in public bodies that pay even less.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Martin. You're very welcome to stay for the committee. I'll It's up to you entirely.
Okay, thanks.
Partnership working, internal audit, who's,
So Ken's
Ken, you're taking that one.
Good morning, everyone. So the last of our 3 reports today is the partnership working report. HIW has joint working relationships with a number of stakeholders, both NHS and non-NHS. Our audit looked at the arrangements for managing those relationships, which include service level agreements, memorandums of understanding, data disclosure agreements, and information sharing agreements. Our audit found that a central record has been maintained of all non-partnership working arrangements, and these were covered by documented agreements. A standard process has been developed for establishing of joint working or partnership working arrangements, and the lead responsible officer is assigned to each joint working or partnership arrangement, who is responsible for periodically reviewing those arrangements. From our testing, we did raise 2 recommendations in total. One was a high priority recommendation around the needs to develop procedural guidance. We thought everything was pretty much there, but it wasn't in the one documented, like such as a framework document. And then there was some recommendations around the monitoring of the agreements that weren't being done quite as robustly as they should have been. So we've made some recommendations around that. But overall, it's reasonable assurance, which is still a positive outcome. So happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, that's fine. I've got a couple of questions, but
Yeah, I've got just a couple. Firstly, thank you for the report, and you know, again, a mixture of outcomes, which is again not itself about them. Clearly, a lot of this is work in progress. The issue of guidance, I think it's a point well made in Objective 2. Given the deadline of 30th of November for I think the draft working framework to be produced, I'm just wondering where we might be with that. Bear in mind the field work was completed back in September. So is that now in progress?
It is in draft form.
It's in draft form.
It is. It's something that we're aiming to complete certainly in the next month or so. So most definitely at this deadline.
Chair, would it be useful for us to have sight of a working draft? Or?
Yeah, I think it would.
It's a really important area. I think. Yeah, absolutely. Just wondering, in terms of the level of assurance that you gained or provided as a consequence of this, you said limited assurance and the impact being moderate. I'm just wondering how that judgment was reached.
So that limited assurance was around a specific element. So across the department, I think there were 5 different areas. So limited was on that specific point around guidance for staff. And I guess it comes down to a bit of judgment. So across the 5 areas, you can see 1 limited, a couple of reasonables, and a couple of substantial. So the reasonable thing that Cameron's referred to is that overall view across how does that feeling balance across the sort of overall scope of the objective of the review. That makes sense. I'm not sure. I assume that was your question.
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah, I was trying to figure out in my head what the risk factors were.
Yeah. It's always a tricky one, and I guess that's why that phrase for internal is opinion. So it's down to judgment and experience on what we see around and how we've come across things in the past. So it is taking a view on things and what does it feel right on? How does it feel?
Okay, look at it from a slightly different angle. Were there any examples of where partnerships, relationships in this context had, say, gone wrong, but where something had happened that might have otherwise not have happened had this been in place? No. Well, that's reassuring in itself.
No, I mean, things that we review dates have been missed, but
Sorry, Ken, I missed that.
review dates have been
Oh, missing a review dates, yeah.
as far as the actual agreements were, they were still trending on.
Has been this then? we looked at a sample of where there was an agreement in place.
Yeah.
You risk it where there isn't an
Yes.
agreement in place and you don't know that there's an agreement in the first place. So that's where you come in or guidance to start to know that you need to enter into that formal relationship to an SLA or MOU.
And it's important to start because it's providing that backup, isn't it?
Yeah.
My questions
Yeah.
are very much building on what you just said, actually, which is I thought slightly differently about the opinion on assurance. I was quite surprised that we got a reasonable assurance for a couple of them. I think that where we haven't got the record up to date, I was surprised that that was reasonable because it doesn't feel like it's assuring me at all.
I suppose it was back to the point, I think the partnerships were still continuing and there was no problems, and although some of the process haven't been followed completely.
But that feels more dangerous to me because then you're proceeding with a partnership with no agreement. So it really felt, I felt uncomfortable. Oh, I'm sorry, my shoes just been back. I felt very uncomfortable with that. Also the SLAs, I wasn't quite sure, and I don't know if either of the execs who are here today perhaps can add to this, but I wondered how are those being monitored formally? Have we got proper performance management in place for each of those, every single SLA that we've got? And have we got an SLA for everything that we need to have one? Sorry to put you on the spot.
So I can only comment on the ones that I'm directly involved in. Yeah, that will do all of them. But I know for shared services, which is one of the most significant that we have quarterly review meetings where we go through their performance report and sort of question and performance manage. You know, I suppose our joint commitment to that working together arrangement, and we've re-established those in the financial year because they were obviously on COVID. And I know that I spoke to Emma and Ken sort of towards the end of last week about the internal audit coming to look at those performance management arrangements and whether we're getting that right. So I know that they are in place for shared services and all the services they provide for us and single week employer. So two of the biggest, most material, just financial commitments. And we are doing that. I know that we've got an SLA with DHCW as well. So I know there are meetings that take place with
One I've written down.
yeah, with them. So we regularly review, well, there's an annual review of that SLA arrangement and the pricing included in the arrangement that we have with them. I've not been involved in those meetings because that would be Sean's territory in terms of the director of digital. But I know that those meetings do take place. So I suppose I can speak for those in terms of all of the other SLAs that we have.
So I was going to differentiate between SLA and MOU here. So I understand the questions about the SLAs. I think I'm pretty confident that where regards with an SLA, you are paying for a service. Therefore, I think we're pretty confident that all SLAs are in place. With regards to your point that we have got some documents that are over on and have not been reviewed within time. Well, the impact of that is that, provided you are, ideally, of course, they should have been reviewed within time, and we are putting in measures to ensure that takes place. However, where you are receiving a service and paying for it, of course, to look at that position, they would say that that document has been renewed. It would deem to be effective, although obviously we should be reviewing it in time. With regards to MOUs, we are actively looking at where we should have more MOUs in place. And I think that we will be having more MOUs. We are having some challenges with regards to some organisations not wanting to respond. But remember, an MOU is a non-legally binding document. And what we're aiming to do that is to confirm in writing that both parties understand what they are expecting from that relationship. So given the nature of an MOU, it's obviously less risky than an SLA, but we are actively looking to engage more MOUs so that we are formalising our relationship. But remember, it's a non-legally binding document, so it's basically something that enables both parties to sit down together and agree, these are our common objectives, and this is what we would expect each party to do in terms of reaching that common objective.
Okay, and at the higher end, obviously, we've got the contract, the proper contract monitoring, which is, you know, at the top end.
Yeah, so I guess there's three
Yeah.
levels. You've got the
Yeah.
formal contracts for external parties. The SLAs are of the public sector organisations, usually
Yeah.
part of the NHS, and the MOUs are, you know, more informal by nature, but obviously looking to formalise the relationship, and
Yeah.
but we know what we're expected.
One. I was just on that, on the contracts point. So our procurement team are actively involved in performance managing all that contractual relationship. So
Just a really quick question. David, you said there were some examples of where organisations haven't responded, I think in the context of MOUs. Have we had situations where organisations have refused to enter into a negotiation for an MOU?
No, and you know, given the informal nature of an MOU, it's the first sentence. This is a non-legally binding document, so not formally refusing it would be not getting a response as we would like, you know, formal response back. So that's the kind of the challenge that there is. And some organisations may well, or they haven't physically written down, but they might not think that there's a need. But we haven't had any, as far as I'm aware, we've not had a formal no, we don't want to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what you said around, being surprised the one area wasn't limited. I think, you know, we did a sample test, and if I think we found more had not had updates and reviews, then it might have been limited. You know, within that sample, it wasn't across the black. There was some that had been reviewed in time. That's right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I mixed that, but I'm just a bit nervous about this one, only because I know that this is an area that can go badly pear-shaped, where things are in place. I've seen quite a lot of evidence where the partnership arrangements haven't delivered what they're supposed to. So we'll look with interest, I think, at you know, bringing this back and the recommendations. To really apologise. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Chair.
And I think I'd just like to say this is an example, I think, of where we knew that things weren't necessarily likely to be perfect, and it came out from the risk assessment. So it is tantamount to actually looking at and learning from it. So excellent. Okay.
One
Yes.
just final question. There were 4 actions requiring completion by the 10th of October. Just wondering if they've been done.
I think we're still working our way through the ones looking over. But we'll need to get back to you and confirm that. So
Yeah, it was in respect of items 2.1 and 2.1b. So sharing internal audit report with executives, reminding the importance of undertaking performance.
that's completed. Yeah. Do you want to go through them then? So that's specifically. So that's completed.
That's been completed. And ensuring the contracts are about to expire and reviewed within time.
Messages. So we're kind of we have been in discussions about creating an automated system.
Yeah.
And I know we're pretty close to completing that. It's just the final automation needs to get IT involved. So I know we're pretty close to completing that.
Yeah, I think there were 2 others, which was in respect of the updating of the central register, so that we captured, I think, the renewal dates for MOUs and SLAs.
Some of you are copies of the so that's
Great. Okay, fantastic. And I think there was a suggestion that the register be amended to include columns recording whether review has taken place. So there's a bit. Okay, fantastic. Thanks.
Thank you, Jonathan. Okay, so we are asked to note the progress report for assurance, note the workforce training and development, substantial assurance, the migration, substantial assurance, and partnership working, reasonable assurance.
Yes.
Happy to note those. Thank you. And thanks very much to internal audit for those. Okay, moving on to Audit Wales progress report. Is it Andrew or Avisha who's taking the progress report? Andrew?
I'm happy to take the progress report. Thanks, Chair. I'll take it as read and just really to highlight sort of on the performance audit update. The structured assessment is in there and we've marked it as complete and it's in the papers today, and Avisha will shortly give a sort of brief overview of that report. And then the other substantive element of work, which is related to workforce planning, two parts really. One element of it's focusing on HEIW's own workforce planning arrangements, and the other one's sort of how it sort of strategically supports the wider workforce planning across NHS Wales. So that work we are now commencing. So we've just put out a request to meet the who we think is going to be the lead executive, and we look to issue the terms of reference in the next week or two. So that will be starting and hopefully progress relatively quickly. So happy to take any questions on that. Sorry, if I could just highlight in the appendices, we've got a couple of reports in there, which are national reports. One relating to net zero carbon and decarbonisation, and the other one to equality impact assessments. On the decarbonisation report, we haven't included formal recommendations in it. It's a cross-cutting, cross-sector review, but it does include 5 calls for action. So probably something for the committee to think about and HEIW to think about how it might seek to address some of those. It might not sit comfortably within sort of traditional formal recommendation tracking, but potentially as something it could be potentially achieved through some other reporting mechanism to committee or the board. On overall progress of decarbonisation. I guess generally with that report, we found across the NHS Wales that progress probably isn't as we'd expect. There's sort of poor evidence of progress, and the NHS Wales' own decarbonisation strategy requires a 34% reduction of carbon emissions by 2030, alongside probably the more challenging net zero 2030 targets, and as we say, we haven't seen sort of sufficient evidence of progress. So it's probably something that'd be useful to bring to the board's attention. And then on the equality impact assessments, again, there's a report for noting and information. But yeah, happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. I've got a couple of questions, but Jonathan, you've got.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, Andrew, can I welcome the report. I think it's fair, it's robust, it's thorough. I think certainly provides us as a committee with I think quite a significant steer as to where we are as an organisation, but also some of the things that we can respond to. And again, I think that's healthy. If it was all 100% perfect, I think it would probably set a few alarm bells ringing. And again, I think it's good to get the steer that we've got in the report. I'm just thinking.
Have you moved on to the structured assessment?
Oh, I'm sorry, I have, yes. Can I
hold because I think Avisha's going to take us through it. So.
Oh, fine. Okay. Yeah. Well,
yeah. Hold. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So, in terms of the, there were a couple of questions that you raised, Andrew, I think on the status. On national reports, I think that's quite pertinent because I certainly made a note, actually, funny enough, as we were going through to remind myself of our process for all Audit Wales national reports. Now, certainly previous hat on, I used to read them and flag up anything that was relevant to the organisation. Is that there's an expectation, I know, that we do that, and I just want to check our processes. Do we flag those up and bring, because we haven't had one for ages, a national report to the audit committee in terms of the relevance for HEIW, because quite a few of them aren't necessarily relevant, but you don't flag those up for us, do you? You don't do the legwork. We're expected to do that. Is that right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, if there's a clear relevance to the committee, then we would bring it certainly to the committee's attention, either including in the update or the full report for noting. So I think it depends on sort of how relevant it is. Say the carbon offset one is or the decarbonisation report is slightly difficult or different in the fact that it hasn't got sort of formal recommendations. Quite a lot of our national reports will do, and then what we'll do is highlight the recommendations which are specifically relevant to the body, so HERW, and then they can be tracked. So that's what we do typically with other organisations, and we're sort of more than happy. I think this was sort of slightly an exception because the way the calls for action have been drafted. But if you're happy to proceed on that basis, then what we'll do is as we prepare updates, we can include either a summary within the update or the full report if it is pertinent to HERW's core business.
Really helpful, actually. Yeah, very helpful. I'll take that as an offer. Excellent. That's really helpful. Okay, so in terms of the two specifics, David, we can bring back our response to those two as requested from Audit Wales, can't we? That's absolutely fine. And what was the other thing?
Chair.
Yeah.
Good question, and perhaps I should know the answer to this, but I don't. As an organisation, have we just dealing with the issue of the 2030 net zero carbon target and the work that Audit Wales have been doing? I'm just wondering, have we done an assessment of our, I'm going to be able to let a nod now and give an answer before I can finish the question. But so we've done an assessment of our carbon footprint as an organisation, so we know what we're doing as an organisation in terms of,
So yeah, just to sort of answer that. So I'm actually the exec lead for sustainability in HERW. So we have a baseline. The issue that we are encountering at HERW is our baseline was taken in 2021, which was a bit of an unusual year. So we are actively going to engage with the Carbon Trust to sort of take that back, if we can, to sort of that 18-19, because our reduction target is against a baseline. We've got a decarbonisation action plan, so that is actually sort of there's work being undertaken at the moment. One of the challenges that we'll have is as we grow the organisation in terms of staff, that creates more sort of carbon emissions. So it's a balance between what can we do to reduce those emissions while the staff group is very bigger, that means that they are increasing. So we do have a decarbonisation action plan. We are also engaging in work for the system to support climate smart education across all of our programmes and into the wider workforce. So there's sort of two streams to this work really. There's our own emissions and how we're dealing with that, and I guess our programmes on the wider workforce. So yeah, that plan is there, and we've got a very active green group. I think on the way you can see some of the activity that they've undertaken outside. Yeah. But in reality, I guess that's not going to offset our carbon emissions. We have to take concerted action, to be able to do that.
I think Audit Wales should take some great assurance from that.
Yes. I remembered my second question, Andrew, which was, and I know Dave Thomas came to the All Wales Audit Committee chairs and gave us an update, but the workforce, I mean, when you decided to do a piece of work on workforce across Wales, I'm sure you didn't envisage the sort of headlines that you were walking into it just at the moment, but there's going to be intense pressure on that piece of work, isn't there? I would think, and it has work been done to bring that forward at all, or to change the scope in any way of the national piece of work? I know you're only embarking on the local pieces, but people are going to be clamouring for this for all sorts of reasons.
I mean, what we're trying to do is bring forward the work that we can do. Alongside this, we've got sort of, I suppose, equal priority work around unscheduled care right now, and Dave probably updated you on that. And again, that's sort of there are significant pressures in the NHS system right now. So we've got quite a lot of work around that. So what we've tried to do is bring some sites forward. So we're just planning that out at the moment, of which sites we can actually bring forward. So there's a bit of a phased approach, but it means that we can actually sort of get some work through the system. The point at which we start any national work, we need to sort of take a view of, have we undertaken enough local work to be able to start to summarize the key themes coming out of our local reviews. And we also do then want to consider the wider national arrangements within Welsh Government. And I think given some of the system pressures, early scoping work we've undertaken has certainly identified a lot of concern around the health social care interface. And I think, you know, we're not looking to look within social care as part of the local reviews, but I think as a national setting, you've got an integrated health and social care workforce strategy, and I think it's probably worth us looking at that front. So we're going to have to form a view early in the next calendar year on when we can start the work on the national, because we need to undertake enough of the local field work to be able to confidently draw some of the key themes through that work.
Great, thanks. All right, we'll look forward to updates, and I won't ask the question once if you don't get the data from the local bodies. We'll just await updates, but it's a huge piece of work. Okay, all right, so that's the progress report. So Avisha, are you going to talk to the structure assessment?
Yeah, sure. So this year's structure assessment focused on the organisation's governance, strategic planning, financial management and resource management arrangements. So I'm going to take the report as read, but I'll take the opportunity to highlight the main points. So overall, this is a positive report. We found that HEIW has good governance arrangements in place, a stable organisational structure, and key systems assurance continue to mature. But we found that there's scope to enhance the transparency of board business, and we've made a few recommendations around that area. The organisation has robust strategic planning arrangements, which is supported by wide-reaching stakeholder engagement, a clear monitoring framework and board-level scrutiny. In terms of finance, the finances are well managed with good systems of financial control, monitoring and scrutiny. And whilst we know that HEIW is taking steps to improve financial reporting, we've thought there's scope to better explain the consequences of underspends within financial reports, or the finance reports that can go to board. And lastly, we found that HEIW has good arrangements in place to support the well-being of its staff, as well as the wider NHS. But we think that PADR compliance is not achieving the set targets, so we've made a recommendation around that. So we made 4 recommendations in total, and as I've said, they relate to further enhancing public transparency of board business, strengthening financial reporting, and improving PADR compliance rates. Not going to say anything more than that, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Avisha. Positive. Jonathan, you did start.
No, it was fine, Chair. Sorry, I was rushing into the main report, so I was skipping over the bits. It was the reference in the report to the planning cycle and the fact that we had approved the IMTP after we'd approved the education and commissioning and training plan. Just wondering, obviously there's reference paragraph 53 to the fact that we are working to better align these 2 processes in time for the 2023 planning cycle. Just wondering what we need to do to get to that point. I'm sure there's a reason why it happened in essence the wrong way round, but is that straightforward to amend?
You have to take that.
Yeah. So at a point in time, we're considering whether the 2 plans could be amalgamated. So we have 1 plan because other NHS organisations submit an IMTP, and that and that's all. Our dialogue with Welsh Government was that they actually prefer the education and training plan to be submitted and considered over that summer period, so that I suppose amongst their policy colleagues they can all consider the recommendations included in there and then make a decision to support. The Minister makes an announcement on that support to education and training of the workforce. And so whereas we will, we'll streamline process so that the education training plan will come into the plan 4 months team, and they will focusing on completing that and making sure that all parts of the organisation are considering the impact of it. They will still remain 2 separate plans, but inextricably linked, because I think once we've established those commissioning quantums financially in the education training plan, that's what's presented into the IMTP. So a significant amount of that sort of costing that is undertaken as part of the education and training plan process and then replicated in the IMTP.
It is bizarre to me that they're separate plans. I have to say, you think that any medium-term plan might include education and training for us, but there we are. I understand that if on request we have to do them separately, then that's what we have to do. But
yeah, I think the education and training plan is reliant on health boards workforce plans that come out of their IMTP. So the cycle is that we had to have that intelligence to be able to construct that education and training plan. To make that part of the IMTP, we'd be sort of at least a further 6 months out of date, because you'd have to take it from a previous year. So there are a lot of reasons to keep them, yeah.
But there lies the risk, Chair, is that in essence we are, in drafting our IMTP and our commissioning plan, we are heavily reliant on others doing their work as swiftly as possible. And that's quite unique. There are very few other bodies probably have to be in the same position as us. We are reliant on many others doing their work first.
Yeah, I suppose because the national organisation, so I know quite a few specialist services, we're in the same place. Like the HCW are very in a similar position, and EASC, the ambulance commissioning. So yeah, I think if you are a national organisation and your work impacts on all the other bodies, then you're in that cycle of being reliant on some of the information that they produce.
Yeah.
A national strategy, and they could be reliant on, perish the thought. Yeah. Okay, what was I going to ask? Oh yeah. Avisha, we talk about in here, and I've seen it somewhere else as well. Our IMTP is probably one for Rhiannon again, actually. Our IMTP is approvable. Does that mean we don't get it approved?
Yeah, so HEOW is not a body that's included in the 2014 NHS Finance Wales Act, so it doesn't have the duty to produce an IMTP. But it produces one out of good practice, and it goes through the similar approvals process as other health bodies, but it doesn't need ministerial, it doesn't need sign off by the minister, approval by the minister. There's a note in footnote 5 that explains that within the report as well. But yeah, but like I said, that this is HEOW's first IMTP as well. So just it's been deemed approvable, but it doesn't have to be formally approved.
Seem to be doing an IMTP for ages, but this is our first formal one. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. So I think that the 2020 IMTP was again deemed approvable, but then the IMT process was suspended because of COVID, and then we moved into quarterly planning cycles and an annual planning cycle. So this is HEOW's first formal IMTP.
It's an oddity, so I think it's important we document that, because it's an obvious question for anybody, which is where October.
Sure.
We're not likely to get anything approved, is the answer to that. Yeah. provable is the equivalent of,
It's de facto.
yes.
It speaks to whether that legislation doesn't formally enable it.
Isn't it?
It is, but there are a number of other examples of, because we have been created reasonably lately, so it's like we don't know whether the latest Welsh language act. So,
Yeah.
that's not correct.
Right, thank you. Sorry to labour that. All right, we're asked to note the Audit Wales progress report and note the structured assessment. And I should say, I think both Jonathan and I have both commented on a very positive report and commends the organisation, everybody who's contributed to that, because it is an excellent report, really, from auditors. I can't remember issuing many like that myself, but so really pleased to be on the receiving end of something that gives us not a clean bill of health, because as Paul said earlier, we're not looking for a clean bill of health on everything. We're looking to improve. So thank you for that, and thanks for all the work that goes into it, and indeed getting it to the audit committee in a prompt way, which makes it even more relevant. So thank you to the team at Audit Wales.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I'm reminded that I am a little behind on time, so we'll endeavour to catch that time up. So welcome to Lena to the committee, and we'll move straight on to the procurement compliance report and improvement plan.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, all. Yes, I have shared the report. So my colleague Janine Chris, she is not at work, recovering from her operation. So I am stepping in on her behalf. The purpose of the procurement compliance report and procurement improvement plan is to provide the Audit and Assurance Committee with an update in relation to the following. It's the procurement activity undertaken during the period between 16 June 2022 and 15 September in accordance with the procurement and contracts called for building and engineering works of the standing financial instructions. The next item is to present the Audit and Assurance Committee with an update on the procurement improvement plan for HEIW, which you will find it in Appendix 3. Appendix 4, it's the report to inform the committee on a number of changes that are being proposed procurement legislation in the United Kingdom that will have an impact on the procurement of healthcare services in Wales. The report provides an initial summary of the changes for information only for the HEIW Audit and Assurance Committee. Procurement activity undertaking during this the 3 months period between June and September are the following. Single quotation actions noted, they are 2. Single tender actions in total 6. Single tenders for consideration following a call for an OGE competition. We didn't have any of these. Contract extensions 3. Award of additional funding outside the terms of the contract, whether that's been executed via the contract change note or variation of terms, in total 2. Do you have in front of you the Appendix 1 and 2, or shall I open that here on the screen?
No,
Chair, it's up to you.
Everybody's had an opportunity to look at the papers, I think, Lena. So I don't think we need to go through them in detail. Are you happy to take questions on the compliance report first?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Chair.
Jonathan?
There were a couple of questions, but I just want to figure out where they were in the documents. So I'm happy to.
Okay, I'll kick off then. I know I've asked this question so many times now, but I'm still really concerned. I know you've endorsed them all, Lena, but I'm still concerned by the number of single tender actions. How does this compare to other organisations? Because we seem to have an awful lot of them, and for the same sort of areas. Is there anything that we can do or need to do, perhaps to protect ourselves against any reputational or criticism from external sources?
Yes, the key for this, Chair, is for procurement to be engaged with the service well in advance of the requirement, and to monitor whether there is a requirement for renewal and whether that could be taken up to the open up to the market as a full competition. We find ourselves in scenarios whereby we are against time, and time is of essence due to its urgency. We cannot really take it up the opportunity and open for competition, and hence this is triggering single tender action requirements. There has been instances whereby it's not only first submission, but it has been multiple submissions.
And I think that's clearly what we as independent members have noted a number of times, that we seem to be going round in the same sort of cyclical approach. And there are some here that I think, I don't want, it's an open session, so I don't really want to go into some of them in too much detail, but there are some that I think could give rise to some questions. So I guess it's, and I'm looking to the execs really for help here in terms of how we reverse this cycle and actually get in much earlier. And with the best will in the world, it doesn't always create competition. We know that, we've seen that with the most recent one. But there must be something that we can do to sort of almost reverse this. So
yes, we are proactively these contracts, whether it's through the STA or even through the request single quotation action route, we are including those in our contracts register, and that's where you will see in appendix 3, no, not in appendix 3, but in our contracts register, which I will cover in the closed session. It has far many more contracts added to the report, to the register. Now that enables us to proactively monitor those contracts once they are on our register, master register, for renewal purposes. So in advance of renewal requirement, where the system will flag up that a particular contract is up for renewal in the next 6 months, and procurement will work in advance with the service to ensure continuity of service, but also continuity of supply, but through a compliant and competent route.
okay, thank you, Lena. Brianna, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I suppose this is a snapshot of the single tender activity that we're approved and endorsed. I think the other side of the coin is the activity that you can't see here, which are the ones that we've said, no, that's not right, or that's not appropriate. And we've encouraged the service to actually do more work and go out to competition. I think there are some areas where there is an improvement to be made, clearly, but I think there are some areas where we're undertaking that strategic review too of education and training, and some of these arrangements are coming to sort of conclusion. So this is to fill a gap while the work is undertaken with a much longer term solution. So I know there are a number and there is work to do, but I'm quite careful in terms of what is this appropriate to be a single tender. And there are a number that we say no, actually that's not an appropriate use of them. So
okay, so that's quite encouraging. So we are the contract register, as you say, Lena, that we'll come on to in the closed session, does give us a lot more help in that regard. So I guess, Jonathan, we just continue to monitor, but there are a couple on there that I think could give rise to questions.
One or two in particular, Chair, would give rise to questions. I'm not quite sure whether doing it here.
Perhaps we'll pick it up in the close.
Yeah.
May I make a point here, Chair, please, if possible?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. So this also applies for extensions. So we are working once again with the service to ensure that any extensions are included within our procurement work plan for the future, and to avoid again extending non-compliantly, and having a robust plan in advance to enable to test the market robustly for the requirements needed in the future.
That's reassuring. So, thank you very much, Lena. Do you want to move on to the improvement plan?
Yes, thank you, Chair, of course. Okay, bear with me. Okay, procurement improvement plan, which you have seen the report, the update in Appendix 3. A bit of background on this. During 2021, HEIW commissioned an independent review of our procurement processes that in place we had with the organization. In response to the recommendations of this review, 19 actions were proposed, targeting specific areas of improvement. Regular updates on progress against these actions have been provided to the Audit and Assurance Committee. And I am pleased to mention that of the 19 actions, 17 are marked as fully complete. 2 actions were previously marked as complete, but were reopened following a further review. The information is included, further details in Appendix 3. And therefore, those activities that have been opened recently, they are not major. It's rather for procurement support to provide ongoing awareness raising and training to HEI colleagues as part of the live procurement exercises to be conducted by procurement. We have also reopened activity number 17, whereby WSSP procurement services will continue to provide a full level of support to the service and to engage with the heads of the departments to fully support you with your all future requirements. There has been live clinics in place with our colleagues. These have been established to ensure face-to-face accessibility to our team, and also through virtual means on a weekly basis. A full review of forthcoming directorate procurement is underway to ensure capacity to deliver. And Rhiannon, you're aware, we discussed an additional resource, and that's been recently approved to take on board additional workload of HEIW, and that will be prioritized as well. So that's out of the 19 activities. We are on track to improving our services to the organization.
Thank you, Lena. Jonathan, do you want to? Okay, that's very encouraging. I think the audit committee have been following this improvement plan for some considerable time now. So it's reassuring to see that this has really been grabbed hold of, Lena, and things are on the improvements. journey, and also the resources, because that would be one of my questions, which is the resources are they to help to do this. So I'd like to still receive, I think, as an audit committee, updates on procurement. I think it's been one of our key areas of risk and will continue to be so, because we're such a unique type of organisation and inherited many contracts that I guess you know, has been in place for some time. So so thank you for all the work, and thanks, Rhiannon, to you and the team for the liaison, because I can see that that's a real partnership now, and helping to deliver. So thank you, Lena, and best wishes to Janine.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. I will convey your message.
Thank you. Okay, so we're asked to, oh, sorry, they were two separate. No, they are one. We're asked to note the report for assurance, appendices 1 and 2, and note
Yes.
appendix 3. Thank you, Jonathan. Did you want to say anything on procurement reform? I think we've seen the papers. Is there anything that you want from this as a committee?
Yes, Chair, if possible, I try to be as brief as I can. It's exciting legislation. With your permission, I shall inform the committee. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. So the report is, the purpose of it is to inform the committee on a number of changes that are being proposed to procurement legislation in the United Kingdom that will have an impact on procurement of healthcare services also in Wales. This paper provides an initial summary of the changes for information for the HEIW Audit and Assurance Committee. So, following the UK's exit from the EU, on 15 December 2020, the UK government published a green paper on transforming public procurement, outlining proposals for procurement reform. The government's response to the green paper was released in December 2021, a year later, following 600+ responses to the consultation. During this time, Welsh government has worked closely with the UK government to develop the procurement reform bill. In August 2021, Welsh ministers agreed to join the UK government's procurement reform bill as the mechanism for procuring goods and services across Wales. Welsh ministers have agreed that the bill will apply in Wales. So the purpose of the UK government believes that the reform can transform public procurement to make it faster, fairer, and more effective. It also aims to reduce the complexity of current arrangement contracts we have in place and move towards a position whereby procurement is focused on delivering an outcome, performance-based, whole life cost approach. Welsh ministers have agreed that the procurement reform bill introduced by the UK government will also apply in Wales. Currently, the intention is for the bill to make its way through the legislative process and obtain royal assent sometime in 2023. The government has stated that the bill will create a simpler and more flexible system for public procurement, open it up to new entrants such as social enterprises, allowing them to compete for and win more public contracts. It will embed transparency throughout the commercial life cycle so that public money can be properly scrutinized. Yes, sorry, Chair.
Sorry, can I just stop you? Because I think everybody's had an opportunity to look at the papers. Is there anything specifically you want from the committee, or is it for noting?
Chair, it is for noting because the procurement reform bill, it's already been accepted by Welsh Government. However, we have the supply provider regime that is it's underway consultation, and Welsh Government has issued letters to chief executives of health boards across Wales to attend a workshop and to complete an informal consultation and informal questionnaire. I must point here that my colleague Janine has attended the workshop and also completed the questionnaire on behalf of HEIW, as other colleagues have done on behalf of their respective organizations. Now, the Welsh Government wished to consider whether the Health and Care Act in UK would be applied in Wales. Now, there are key issues here, obviously, to be considered, and the ministers are aware of it because it opens up into competition, the opportunities. But however, should there be a different set of legislation in Wales from the UK legislation from England, then it can frustrate the market, it can frustrate the supply base, and it can also bring at halt the cooperation across the border with other English NHS organizations. So we have provided a genuine understanding of the risks, issues that NHS health boards may face in Wales, and it is up for ministers to take those consultations back and make informed decisions.
Thank you, Lena. Thanks. I think the papers are very helpful. I think the issue is very clear in the papers as to the problems that it could cause. And we're very grateful, I think, for you and colleagues for completing the pro forma on our behalf. So, so thank you for drawing it all to our attention, and we'll await progress, I think, is probably all we can do at this stage. Thank you for the report. The committee's asked to note the report. Are you happy to note it? Thank you, Lena.
Thank you, Chair. Just, Chair, may I add a point?
Yes,
if
yes.
possible. So whatever the outcome of this report would lead to, whatever legislation, then it is our colleagues in procurement and WSS's procurement to continue providing the relevant training and support to our colleagues, to our service users on this legislation, which may impact the end users directly.
I'm sure Rhiannon's noted that. And, she's
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Rhiannon.
Just one final point. I think, although we need to be aware of all of these legislative changes, and it's actually quite limited for HIW, so the changes are in respect of healthcare provision. And I think there's only one agreement that we have, which is in psychological support and medical training. That's the only one that we have that is very impacted.
Okay, I can see the impact on the yeah. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Lena.
Thank you, Chair. And with your permission, if there are no further questions, I shall be leaving the session and later join the closed session.
That's fine. Thank you, Lena. See you later.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay, moving on to counter fraud progress report. Gareth.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Oh, good morning, sorry. Yeah, I'll be as brief as I can. I take it that everybody's seen the report and read it. You'll see that we've continued our work with improving the infrastructure of the counter fraud provision. The key notes really from this progress report are that we've lost a staff member who has gained a role within the counter fraud service Wales. So we are one person under at the moment. An advert has gone out that closes today, and we've got probably I haven't had a chance to go through it. We're about 5 or 6 shortlistable candidates. So hopefully that will be resolved within the near future and certainly by the end of this quarter. With regards to awareness, we're progressing with that. We've delivered a number of awareness sessions in the last quarter, I think 3 in total, and we have further ones planned with regards to corporate induction. We're still aiming to carry out further sort of more specific sessions to different cohorts of staff, for example, within the finance team with regards to mandate fraud and things like that. We've issued only 1 newsletter this quarter. There's another one due to come out very shortly, and we're trying to time that with International Fraud Awareness Week, which comes along in November. So we've delayed that slightly. 2 fraud prevention notices were issued by the Counter Fraud Authority during the period. They were acted upon, and a brief investigation was carried out with regards to those involving cyber-enabled mandate fraud. And the investigation showed that HIW had no interaction with either of the problematic email sort of senders, if you like. Investigations, we maintain that there are 2 live investigations ongoing, which I'll cover in more depth in the private session, which has been requested. So they're still ongoing. Yeah, I've had meetings with Martin Pinnell in relation to the inherent sort of fraud risks within the organisation, and we've had a number of meetings, and we're making progress on that with regards to scoring those risks and then determining what further action we can do jointly with regards to that. And then in relation to the student nurse bursary issues that we've had, I was hoping to report that the internal audit report that was commissioned by Shared Services Partnership, which was due to be completed by October, I was hoping I would have been able to feed back to you on that, but that hasn't yet started. I did chase that up in September, but there's been a delay due to the busy period within the Student Awards Service being July and August and September, which times with the start of term, if you like. So I've been assured that that is going to be commenced this month, and then hopefully we can feed into that further in the future. I think that's about it for the most relevant points, but if anybody has any questions, then please feel free to ask.
Okay, thank you, Gareth. Jonathan? My only question, Gareth, is I think at the last committee, and indeed probably a previous committee, we talked about resources and the application of resources, and we can see that a lot of those have been used. And I think we asked as a committee for an assessment of whether it was adequate, and I'm not quite sure when that's coming back to the committee.
Okay. I wasn't, yeah, sorry, I must have, I didn't realise that that I was required to do a full assessment on that. I mean, I can write a report for the next audit committee, if you like, where I think we're at with that. I mean, ultimately, I think as we've previously discussed, I think the question is 50 days counter fraud provision enough per year? I think that's the question, Jill, isn't it? Chair, sorry.
Brianna, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think we've taken the approach that if we can identify the areas of risk, we can probably use Gareth's expertise at the top end of what we need to be able to do for that. So I guess we're not drawing on that 50 days to enable us to understand the risks in the organisation, because we are aware of those. So, but it would be interesting, Gareth, your assessment of whether 50 days is enough for an organisation of this size, and obviously we're a growing organisation as well.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I mean, just quickly verbally, but yes, 50 days is enough to do the basics, with regards to sort of governance, and no, it probably isn't enough to carry out in-depth fraud risk assessments throughout the year. And I think it's quite telling that, I think I've mentioned before that I can't provide more than 50 days with the resources that I have. But then, so for example, in the last quarter, we've had a big investigation to carry out on behalf of DHCW. And then obviously our resources are dragged there because that's a priority. So yeah, other organizations then maybe do lose out on time spent allocated to them. I don't think you're going to, you know, overall, we will probably spend more than 50 days providing a service for HIW throughout the year, but it's a difficult one to balance when things come in, and you know, it's a very dynamic environment that I can't sort of promise that those days will be covered, or further days will be covered, if you like. It's a difficult one, and I think the question really is one for the organisation of whether they're happy with that sort of setup, if you like.
So perhaps rather than prolong the discussion, perhaps something could come back to the next audit committee with a proper sort of assessment, in the same way as we'd expect internal audit, external audit to say how many days they think they need to give us some assurance. Perhaps we could take something at the next audit committee, do you think?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay.
That may be aware of this, but I think there is something that the directors of finance peer group are going to consider in terms of almost a national approach to county fraud, because you know, I think the arrangements are different in different organisations, and you know, we obviously are using the Cardiff and Vale team, and they are covering a couple of different organisations. So I don't know if it's this week. I haven't seen the papers yet, but I know that something is coming into that of the peer group. And there may be a recommendation for a national counter fraud service that considers every organisation then and all of that risk nationally.
We must be on the same page, I think, because the audit chairs also discuss the same issue. Jonathan.
Thanks, Chair. Can I just go back to the paragraph in Gareth's report around the planned audit work in the field of student bursary awards, saying it wasn't commenced because the awards service being unable to accommodate at the time that it was being requested. Was that just a question of bad timing?
I believe so. We initially tried to carry out a piece of work ourselves, and I think I reported in the last meeting that we were overruled on that by shared services partnership teams there, that this should be carried out by internal audit. That was then incepted and they were supposed to carry it out. I think the problem has been July and August, like I said, and September is the particularly busy time for them when they're having to sort of administrate all of the claims and all of the student bursary claims. So that is certainly what's been fed back to me as to the reason behind the delay, yes.
In terms of the work being anticipated to commence this month, just wondering how long will it take?
I don't know is my honest answer to that. I've requested that we feed into it. I think the target date for completion would be January, but I'm not sure how set in stone that is. That's, like I say, that's something being carried out by the internal audit team of shared services. So I can liaise further back with them, but I'm not sure I'd get a much better answer than that at the moment.
Okay, so they're here.
Services, not
Okay.
yeah, so no, that's why.
Okay.
It would be a peak in their workload and their assessment, because the bursaries means tests, they would be assessing thousands of claims. So from, I suppose, A-level results day onwards, those individuals, they could have submitted their finance applications before that, so they will be assessing all of those. And I think it's probably right to not try to put that on top of them at this point, because I think last year we got into a difficult position with those assessments being delayed and and then students not having the resources to be able to start their courses. So I can understand why they've said no, we need to focus on this, and that review will take place, and that system will still be in operation. So.
Okay. So, but the work will commence this month.
Well, that's what I've been told. Yes.
Can we get some formal assurance on that to the committee? How do I know we've got tiny balls. How do we go about, we've had this conversation a number of times, how do we go about that from our point of view as an audit committee here? And they're not our internal auditors. Can we request a timetable?
You need to talk with the
shared
services team, whoever their contact people are, and ask them to ask them.
Can we do that through our execs then, please, as an action, and get some assurance that that work not only will commence this month, but will come to the next audit committee, or the whatever findings there are. I don't mean the review necessarily, but any findings relevant to us. And Gareth will liaise in the meantime as well.
Yeah.
So you'll have a couple of bites, Secretary.
They do share all of their audit reports through the partnership committee. So yeah, we are cited on those. But I can speak to the director of finance there, and he knows that we've been requesting history. So
okay, smashing. Right, sorry, Gareth, that was
All right.
moving the sessions. Okay, conscious of time, I think quite a lot of the next items are reasonably quick. So is Martin, are you doing the FCPs? So if we carry on now with the financial control procedures, Rhiannon.
So the report details the review of the financial control procedures, and Audit and Assurance Committee are asked to approve the changes that are suggested in the paper. We are including for the first time an FCP14 for grant funding, and suggesting that we remove FCP9, which is petty cash, because we don't have them anymore. That's reassurance, yeah, gone. So I suppose all of the changes have been documented in detail in sort of either or the appendices. So I wasn't going to say much more than that, but just that we are asking for approval of the changes.
Thank you, Rhiannon.
No questions. It's clear and logical to me. So
Yeah, it was. It was very clear, very good. I love the leasing bit. I've been waiting so long to see what the impact of that is. So thank you for that. And despite it being a quick item, a lot of work goes into trawling through these, and it is still Martin's team, is it? Yeah. So can we record thanks to them for keeping us on track, reviewing them systematically and refreshing them. It's a good piece of work, hard work.
It is. And I just to note, I think there are 3 that haven't been sort of finally reviewed, so they will be, that work will be completed and then we'll come back.
Thanks, Rhiannon. Okay, moving on then to the board assurance framework, strategic risks.
Diolch gyda'r So I understand the grammars we're facing with the translation being fixed. Felly, papur i'w nodi ydy hon, ynglyn â'r fframwaith rheoli risg strategol, sydd yn ffurfio rhan o'r fframwaith sicrwydd y bwrdd y BAF. Mae'r pwrpas y fframwaith rheoli risg strategol ydy mapio'r rheolaethau a'r ffynonellau sicrwydd allweddol yn erbyn y risgau strategol AGIC. Mae'r ddogfen wedi cael ei ddiweddaru i adlewyrchu risgau cyfredol AGIC. Felly, gyfnir pwyllgor i ystyried a nodi'r fframwaith rheoli risg strategol os gwelwch yn dda.
Thank you, David. Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one really quick question. I wasn't on the audit committee in July 2021 when the first iteration came to committee. You said that the document's been updated since then. would we possibly get a sort of a version control copy? Because I can't tell from this how different it looks to the iteration that would have come to the committee on the July 2020.
Yes, of course.
So, but there were no observations on the document. It's robust, and I certainly no suggested changes to it, but we just need to get an understanding of how it's changed.
Yeah, that would be good to circulate. Thanks. Even though I was on the committee, it'll be useful to see that. I just have one question, I suppose, and it's probably not one that's easily answered. Strategic risk 7 is about the workforce intelligence and data. I guess as an audit committee and the board, how can we be assured in some ways that we've got the numbers? We know anecdotally that we're not sure how many nurses we've got, how many of this, how many of that. So I suppose I wasn't sure that we had enough of a gap in assurance in there to highlight that that's a really difficult one to fill, and how we get assurance on that, because I'm not sure whether I've seen all the documentation, but I don't really feel assured that we know how many of everything we've got in the system. So perhaps not one for answering here, but perhaps you could throw that one into the exec team at some point.
Yeah, so
That's strategic risk.
so we'll take that back and get back to
Right. Okay, moving on, losses and special payments. Rihanna, you're taking this.
Yeah, so the report sets out the losses and special payments for the period 1st of April to 31st of March, but that have all now been repaid. So they will drop off the report. But for the period 1st of April to 30th of May, we've incurred £10.3 thousand of overpayment of salaries. So we note that we've got 9 cases, which is more than previously reported. We've undertaken some investigation into how these have happened. It does seem to be our side of the equation, not into payroll and shared services. So we can take action to make sure that everybody is aware of their responsibility in terms of letting payroll know when somebody has finished their employment, so that we can just tighten this up and reduce the number of instances where this happens. So we will need help from our sort of people team colleagues and sort of payroll team shared services, but we are going to sort of tighten the loop on this and make sure that we can minimise the number of occurrences of this happening.
Generally speaking, what causes no repayment?
It can be where the NHS payroll is run very early in the month. So the payment is made on the 21st of the month, but the payroll deadline cut-off is around the 10th. There is sort of a supplementary payroll that is also run that captures payments that were missed or other changes, but it is a very early deadline. So if somebody leaves and that notification hasn't been made very early in that cycle, then it can result in another payment. I think we've just got to get better at that notification cycle and making sure that, because obviously people resign and know about it in a reasonable amount of time. So yeah.
Okay, given that this is an issue that we've raised just about every audit committee, to see the number in the time scale is really disappointing. Is it one particular department? I don't necessarily want to know who they are, but is it in one particular area, or we got weaknesses right across the system?
I think it's right across the system. So I don't think the turnover is different in different areas. So it's probably isolated to some of the biggest volume areas. So I think we will have some targeted training and intervention just to make sure that people are aware. the consequence of not doing these things in a timely way. And then we then have to recover this overpayment, and that can be sometimes for an extended timescale.
Yeah, very much so. I guess I, as the chair of the audit committee, would like, if these continue, to ask somebody to come to the audit committee to explain which bit of the system needs changing in order to eliminate these. We're a very small organisation compared to some of the health boards, and this period of time shouldn't be relying on overpayments.
Chair, can I just ask one point of clarification with respect to the speed at which and the success of recovering money that's been overpaid. So if we take the section of the report that says that from the period of 1st of April to 30th of May, there were 9 cases of overpayment of salary amounting to £10,000. Half of that has been recovered. Is it half recovering 100%?
No, we generally have recovered all of the sort of overpayment amount. But I suppose at this point in time, we're not there with those 9, and it depends when they happen, isn't it?
And sometimes they can be incredibly prolonged. They can pay back £10 a month. So there is an effort, as it says on the tin, I guess, losses.
Yeah.
But we haven't had a loss particularly as yet, but nevertheless, this that's a significant increase in a short time scale, so it is a risk.
So again, I'm not particularly familiar with this, Chair. So where somebody is paid monies that they're not entitled to, and therefore would not have been expecting, they're not asked, or rather, we don't expect them to pay it back almost instantaneously. We can actually just put in a framework of recovery that could take many months.
Yes, sometimes.
Yes.
Similar to in everyday
Standard
life as well.
standard practice.
If you make a false and inaccurate payment through your bank, the onus is not, they don't have to give that money back to you. You have all those, in your day-to-day banking, your personal banking, you have all those checks. Are you paying the right people? That's because they don't have to give it back to you.
What do you mean they have to pay back?
Well, if you make a payment and you go through the checking, don't you? If you do the first online payment, it says this is the right sort code, this is name match, and what have you. You've made that money transfer, but there's you've got no guarantee you're getting it money back. You haven't gone through the process, so it's not that dissimilar, is it?
There's a difference between, I suppose, if somebody has left the organisation but they're still in NHS Wales, there are obviously different scenarios underneath all of this. We have always recovered 100% of these overpayments. The number has increased, but I think we should be confident that we will recover this overpayment as well. It's just we need to understand why they're happening and then just be able to tighten that one.
Just thinking of are there some that we don't know about? Could there be overpayments that we don't know?
They shouldn't be, because we're reconciling all.
Yeah, that's the answer I need.
Yeah, we're reconciling all of the pay fees on the payroll, so we're identifying these overpayments.
Okay, thank you, Fiona. Right, okay, I think we've that's good to go. So let's move. What are we supposed to do on this one? Noted. Yes, asked to note it. Yeah. David, corporate risk.
Diolch yn fawr iawn i David. Felly dyma'r gofrestr risg cosbaraethol. Mae'r adroddiad yn rhoi trosolwg o risgau ar y gofrestr risg ar hyn o bryd. Mae yna 13 o risgiau wedi cyfnodi, un sydd yn goch, 4 amber neu oren a 4 gwyrdd. O ran y risg coch, mae'n parhau wneud gyda seithfed diogelwch.
Yn ystod y cyfnod o dan sylw, mae 6 o risgiau wedi cael eu ail-asesu ac wedi gostwng o ran sgôr, ac mae 4 bellach yn wyrdd. Felly, da ni gofyn i'r Pwyllgor Ysgol Ffrae nodi'r adroddiad ac meddylio bod y 4 risg gwyrdd yn cael eu tynnu, sef risg 7, sydd yn ymwneud â data ar gyfer gyfynion deddf lefel staffio nyrsio, rhif 10, sydd yn ymwneud â noddi visas ar gyfer ffosfi meddygon teulu, risg 9, sydd yn ymwneud â'r proses caffael ar gyfer y system rheoli dysgu, ac yn olaf rhif 11, sydd yn ymwneud â rhestr cyflenwyr meddygol. Diolch yn fawr.
Only one very brief one, which was probably something to consider, is and whether it's one for our corporate risk register is the level of vacancies, and whether that's something that needs to be considered
Across the board. I'll take that next visit.
But apart from that, fine. We're asked to note the contents for assurance and approve that those 4 green risks are removed. Happy? Yeah. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, the audit recommendations tracker.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Cadeirydd. Felly dyma'r papur ar y tracio'r sydd yn recordio'r argymhellion archwilio. Mae'r dogfen yn cadw cofnod o'r argymhellion sy'n dod o'n archwilwyr mewnol ac allanol. Ar hyn o bryd mae 23 o argymhellion. O'r rhain mae 15 yn dod o archwilwyr mewnol. Mae un ar hyn o bryd yn ystyried goch, 9 yn wyrdd a tip yn amber. Mae yna un argymhelliad hefyd sydd yn argymhelliad sy'n dod o'r adroddiad digidol. O ran yr argymhellion o ddaeth o'r archwilwyr allanol, mae yna cyfanswm o 7 argymhelliad ac mae 2 yn amber a 5 yn wyrdd. Felly, da ni'n gofyn i'r Pwyllgor Ysgol Ffrae nodi'r adroddiad ac i cymeradwyo bod yr argymhellion sy'n cael ei asesu'n wyrdd yn cael eu tynnu oddi ar gofrestr ysgol.
Thanks, David. Okay, I think just to commend everybody of the efforts that have been made I know we had some in the last couple of years that have been delayed and all the rest of it, but quite a good effort obviously being put in now to nail some of those. So commend everybody for all the effort put into that. I think it's looking in good shape for an audit recommendations tracker. The auditors around the table agree, but it's certainly looking in reasonable shape. So we're asked to note the report, consider the progress and approve that the recommendations which are given a green rating are taken off. Happy with that, Jonathan?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the declaration of interest register.
Diolch, Cadeirydd. Felly dyma'r cofrestr datgan diddordeb. Mae'r Pwyllgor yn ystyried yn blynyddol. Felly na i ddim mewn i'r papur yn unrhyw anelder, ond i gofyn bod y Pwyllgor yn nodi'r fodol yn ysgol hwnna.
There is no mission on the register, but perhaps as it relates to an individual. So I'll speak to you about privately. Yes, please.
And I have one that I don't want to name the person, but I think they've probably got the wrong title, so we'll talk about that offline as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Review of gifts and hospitality register.
Yes, so diolch yn fawr iawn Cadeirydd, felly y papur unwaith eto i nodi slot yna,
Short and sweet. I've just got my headphones on. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm very excited to see this, as most of you know. It's very sad, but we have got some submissions to the Gifts and Hospitality Register, so I'm really pleased to see that clearly the raising of awareness has had an impact. Admittedly, not many, but we're actually clearly making progress.
I think that's the case. So I think COVID didn't help this particular register, but nevertheless, we are.
Not a lot in terms of hospitality going on.
So we have got some specificities, so we will regularly remind colleagues that we need to update.
I think so, because I think as the world moves on, these things are likely to increase quite significantly. So it'll be don't stop, I think, is the message from the committee in terms of raising awareness and reminding people. It's a thankless job. Okay, thank you. So I haven't been informed of any other business. Has anybody got any other business? No, okay. So that brings us to the close of the meeting. The next meeting is on Monday, the 6th of February, 2023. Gosh, moving quickly, at 10 a.m. here. And obviously details of whether that's still in hybrid or in person or whatever will be issued nearer to the time. I'm sure the board will have a discussion on those. Right, it's 12:13 on my machine. Can we resume at 12? I'm going to say 12:20. I'll give everybody time to get a quick break for the closed session. Thank you.